What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The Baylor Bears are up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what Baylor did in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for the Baylor Bears. My projection had them at 6-6, and then my prediction for them was 8-4. So I did have a little bit of a difference there with my projection and prediction for this team. But Baylor obviously was worse than that. This team went 3-9 overall in 2023. Did not even come close to making it to a bowl game last year. So yeah, Baylor, a very disappointing team in 2023. Here was the schedule from last season for Baylor. And you look at their non-conference schedule, they played Texas State, Utah, and LIU. So they ended up losing like a couple of non-conference games. Texas State especially was a very disappointing loss, but you look at Utah, they're out of the Pac-12. They were very competitive in that game, but Utah scored a late touchdown to win that game. So Baylor had a pretty tough non-conference schedule, and then you look at their losses coming in the Big 12. Obviously lost to Texas there, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston, Kansas State, and TCU both on the road. And then West Virginia here at home as well. So again, a 3-9 season for Baylor in 2023. This schedule was very tough, so I think that's the reason why they went 3-9 a little bit last year. But other than that, it was a very disappointing season for Baylor. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for the upcoming season for Baylor. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference this upcoming season. This is their non-conference schedule. They will play Tarleton State at Utah here in week number 2, and then of course Air Force here in the non-conference as well. That Utah game is not officially a conference game. I know Utah is heading to the Big 12 this year, but that's not an official conference game. It will be a non-conference game. This game was scheduled like the year before Utah made a change to the Big 12, so they ended up switching that one over to a non-conference game. And you know, Utah, of course, back when I did their projection, I meant to switch it to a non-conference game, but I didn't know if it was going to be a conference game or not. So that game will be, of course, a non-conference game, and it is on the road. And then you look at Air Force here, a team that's not really too bad. You know, they had a really good season last year as a Group of 5 team. So that's your non-conference schedule here for Baylor for the upcoming season. Let's go back to the schedule now and go game by game here for the Bears. They will kick things off here with Tarleton State here on August 31st. And then after that, they go on the road to play Utah here on September the 7th in week number 2. And then they'll come back at home to play Air Force here on September the 14th. So they play all 3 of their non-conference games here to kick off the season. And then after that, they open up Big 12 conference play here on the road at Colorado here on September the 21st. Then it's back at home here against BYU here on September the 28th. And then they get to the month of October. They go on the road to play Iowa State here on October the 5th. And they then get a bye week here in their second weekend of the month of October. And then they come out of the bye week. They'll play another road game here against Texas Tech here on October the 19th. So they got back-to-back road games there with Iowa State and Texas Tech, but the good news is that you get a bye week in between these 2 road games and back-to-back road games anyway. So that's the good news there for Baylor. Then you come back here at home to play a big game against Oklahoma State here on October 26th. And then it's at home here to open things up in the month of November against TCU on November 2nd. Then they get their second bye week here in the second weekend of the month of November. They come out of the bye week, they'll play West Virginia here on the road on November 16th. And then it's Houston here on the road on November 23rd. So they got back-to-back road games here once again, and this time they will play West Virginia and Houston both here on the road in back-to-back weeks. And then they close things out with Kansas here on November 30th. So that is the schedule for Baylor in 2024. This is a pretty tough schedule. I don't think it's really as tough as last year's was, but this is a very tough schedule. When you got some tough road games, I think your toughest road games on this schedule are definitely Utah and West Virginia, both in the Big 12, and maybe Colorado as well. Even though Utah is a non-conference game, I feel like that should be a Big 12 matchup, but still, it is a non-conference game. It will be on the road, of course, but this is a very tough schedule here for Baylor in 2024. So let's get to the projection now here for the Baylor Bears for 2024. This is not going to be my official prediction. This is simply going to be my projection here based on how tough this schedule is. And this is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, pretty much that percentage is counted as an automatic loss there in the red. 20% 40% games in the orange are going to be games where Baylor will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs, and then 40% games in the yellow are going to be games where Baylor will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown, and then 50-50 games, of course, will stay in the white. Games I think can go either way. Then the 60% games here in the purple are going to be games where Baylor will be favored by about a touchdown, and then 80% games here in the blue are going to be games where Baylor will be favored by a couple touchdowns and also by double digits. And then the 99% games here in the green, pretty much the automatic wins and also the easy wins here in this percentage here on this projection here for Baylor. So we'll start with those easy wins here for 2024 on this schedule for the Bears. I do have one easy win on here only though for Baylor, and that's Tarleton State here on August 31st. I think Baylor should go out here and take care of business in this non-conference game. And I know they did lose to Texas State last year in the non-conference. They should have been able to take care of business in that one, but still, I think Baylor will be ready for, an easy non-conference game this time, and I think they'll be favored by more than 3 touchdowns, 20-plus points, somewhere in that range, and they'll be favored by at least over 95%. So I think Baylor will be favored in that game big in this one, and that's the only easy win on here for Baylor for 2024. Next up, let's go to the games where Baylor will be favored by double digits here, by about a couple touchdowns as well. I do got one game on here in the blue, and that's Air Force here on September the 14th. The reason why I didn't put this game here in the green is just because of how good Air Force was last year. And Air Force beat Baylor a couple years ago in a bowl game, so revenge factor is on the minds here for Baylor for a couple years ago, but Baylor is playing at home in this game. That's the reason why I decided to put this game here in the blue. However, it is really close to being in that purple range, like about 70-something% in there. The reason why it is in the blue though is just because Baylor is playing at home in this one. So I think Baylor, even though it's against Air Force, a pretty good group of 5 team, I still think they'll be favored by double digits here, 10 to 14 points, somewhere in that range. And those are the 2 games where I think Baylor will be favored by, more than 3 touchdowns and also by a couple touchdowns. And then the rest of the games on here, there's not really any other games I can favor Baylor in. So let's skip over to the games now where they're going to be underdogs in. I don't have any automatic losses here in the red, and I also don't have games where Baylor will be double-digit underdogs, but I do have a lot of games on here in the yellow where they're going to be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown. And I got 5 games on here in the yellow. I got Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. 4 games here on the road in the yellow, and then 1 game here in the yellow at home. I think all 5 of these games, I think Baylor will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown. They're all definitely very winnable games. Not saying they're going to automatically lose them and also not automatically win them. These are all definitely very winnable games because when it comes to the Big 12, a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other, and I do expect that thing to happen this year. The Big 12 is going to be a really fun conference to watch, and all these teams are just going to beat up on each other. And that's the reason why, so many Big 12 teams that we've done already, that's the reason why all these projections are so hard here for the Big 12. And again, there's just a lot of even matchups here when it comes to the Big 12 conference. But again, I think all these games that you're seeing here in the yellow, I think Baylor will be a heavy underdog in by about a touchdown. The reason why those 4 games in the yellow are in the yellow on the road is just because they're on the road, and then same thing with Oklahoma State. Not same thing with Oklahoma State, but talent-wise does go to Oklahoma State. That's the reason why Baylor is a heavy underdog in this one. So I think Baylor will be heavy underdogs in all 5 of these games. And then the rest of the 5 games on here, I think Baylor pretty much has 50-50 games here. Colorado, BYU, TCU, Houston, and Kansas. I think all these are your 50-50 games here for the Bears for this upcoming season. Colorado, we don't know how good they're going to be in their first year in the conference. And then BYU and TCU are coming off really tough seasons last year, both missing out on bowl games. You look at Houston, I don't know how good they're going to be, but it is on the road. That's the reason why it turned out to be a 50-50 game. The Kansas game was definitely very close to being a yellow game, but I decided to keep that one in the white just because it's a home game here for Baylor. If it was on the road at Kansas, I would definitely put Baylor as a touchdown of an underdog, but I think all these games here in the white are pretty much 50-50 games here for Baylor for the upcoming season. So let's now get a projected record here for the Bears in 2024. Again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count that 1 green game as an automatic win, then you count that 1 blue game against Air Force as a slight win, then you average out all the 5 of these yellow games here at 40%, then you average out all the 50-50 games here at 50%, and the overall projected record that you get for Baylor for 2024 it comes out to be 5-7. So a 5-7 projected record here for Baylor. I think this is a pretty fair projection based on how tough this schedule is. It is definitely going to be tough for Baylor to make it to a bowl game, especially the season that they had from last year. But maybe Baylor turned things around this year. Maybe they finally turned things around after having a rough couple years ever since they won the Big 12 championship 3 years ago. So 5-7 is the projected record here for Baylor. I think best case scenario would definitely have to be 6-6. Worst case, probably like 4-8 overall. If they do go like 3-9 or 4-8, perhaps that would definitely be a very big disappointment here for Baylor, especially a team that's coming off a 3-9 season a year ago. But again, 5-7 is my projected record here for Baylor for the upcoming 2024 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about the Baylor Bears this upcoming season. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.